welcome to Talking TSM Offseason Edition. Here is your host, Robert Haynes.
Hello and welcome to Talking TSM. If you guys didn't hear it, I got a new guy helping me out here. Saved One is his name. He is somebody who I have known for a while. He's actually been doing a lot of stuff in the past for me in terms of voice work. I know this, it maybe didn't sound as good synced up yet. I'm trying to kind of figure that out. I don't know if I want to do it, before and then have the music play, or do it after, or do it sometime in the middle and find a new spot, or maybe even find a new song for the opening. But that's kind of what this offseason is going to be all about. It's going to be testing new things. And so, make sure you go give Dan a follow at Saved Casting, SAVED Casting. He does an excellent job, so he'll be doing some cold openings and stuff like that pretty regularly. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. But yeah, we're back. I know I took about a 2-week break there. I've been really busy at work, and I kind of wanted to take a break because my mindset after that series was less than advantageous, to say the least. I wanted to make sure I really took time to step away for a little bit, rethink some things, and kind of try and test some new things out, and really come up with some ideas for the show. So with that as well, as I'm going to be trying to do a pretty good amount this offseason, I have a guest with me. Somebody who you all know, who you all are fond of. I've got Meleri, also known as Ben, here. So, what's going on?
Hi, it's good to be back. Happy to be here.
Nah, glad to have you back, man. If you guys don't know, Ben is our statistical genius friend here. This man has been extremely helpful at many a times, not only with the show, but just staying on top of basically everything, it seems like, and was absolutely crucial in the Dynasty League this year, which I hope you had fun, man. I loved it. So
I got last place.
Oh, no way. Did you end up finishing in last?
I did, but that
tough.
was almost exclusively because of Jensen really not doing so well in the regular season. But we'll see how this turns out next year.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the beautiful things about Dynasty is, you don't maybe get to redraft, but you have pieces that you can move around. And hey, Jensen came on at the end of the season. Maybe you could trade him. I know you've got some young talent, such as a man named Adam, in your top.
Yeah. That was a great investment.
Oh, easily,
on my part.
Easily, probably one of your best picks. Probably one of the best picks in the whole draft. And so, for those of you who don't know, real quick, Dynasty allows us to keep the teams that we have, and then it's more about picking up rookies and free agents, waiver wires, trades. It encourages a lot more, I think, thought process. So we're really trying to test this out and see how we can make this work, and then maybe we'll show it to the world once we feel comfortable with what we've come up with. But like I said, Ben's on here to talk about a couple things. Before I get into that, I want you guys to know I promised you changes back in like May or whatever. As you can see, I've already started a little bit. Got the opener there. There's he recorded like 7 different ones. They're pretty good. In my opinion, I really like them. And then I am going to be adding a couple new things to the show. Now, excuse me, I don't know when they are all going to show up on the show, but I am working on making this a little more YouTube friendly, specifically since we get a lot of viewers on YouTube. That does not mean that the podcast version will not have some cool things as well. But here are a couple of things that I have right now that I will be implementing as the year, or as the off season specifically goes on. First off is Facecam. Facecam will be coming here later this off season for the YouTube crowd. I will be, putting myself out there. I've done it with Twitch and everything else before. It's not really a huge deal for me, but I want to add that to this podcast for, again, those of you who are watching as well as listening. And so Well, I know technically it may not, count as a podcast, I guess, with that in some people's eyes. It still will be a podcast, a show. With that as well, we are going to be adding, now this will be coming more than likely during the regular season, just because the off season's a little harder to do this, but having official segments, things like Player of the Week, Trivia Question of the Week, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot of different things, and it's not just going to be called like Player of the Week, Trivia of the Week. Like, I'll have some cool names and stuff. I am also going to be adding like podcasting sounds, so things that you normally hear in other podcasts, that make funny noises or something when people are talking. I want to give those a try and see which ones of those fit and work here as well. And then I have a couple other ideas that I'm not going to reveal just yet. So, thank you for your continued support, for listening and supporting this podcast. I'm really hoping to kind of step it up this year and get some things really figured out so that when we head into the 2022 season, which I know the rest of us are excited for, that then we can kind of have some other cool additions to the show and some more insight into everything that's going on. But that's enough about me, because we have Ben here, and I don't want to waste Ben's time. So, Ben, I know, and I think most of our listeners here know that you're the stats guy. You love stats, and you do a great job with them. And for those of you who may not know, he has worked really hard on an algorithm that it does its best to predict basically not only records, but who's going to win what games based on the players they have and what they've done in the past. And so we did this at the beginning of each split. We're doing it again at the end of each split. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw, overall, and then we're going to, talk a little bit more about TSM specifically.
Yeah, so this past year has been not awful, but the stats have been very deceptive for this entire year. Mm-hmm. TSM more specifically, but I ended up with about a 62% for the entire year at best, which is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not an improvement for me. That was about what I ended at last year. For the most part, it seems like the statistics as a team and the team's records far outshone the players' records themselves. And say maybe with TL swapping all their players around mattered less than when Jack got fired and they brought on Cold instead, and that saw huge shifts in their performance and what my model thought about them and what they were doing. But teams like 100 Thieves, when the coaching changed and their style changed practically overnight, it was almost immediate.
Yeah.
When I thought they were going to be losing every game, and then they just kept winning. And every single player-based metric that I had said that TSM was the 7th, 8th place team in the league, which is obviously not true.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a nightmare. Overall, I can't remember if I said this on the podcast last time or if I just said it offhand to you, but in spring, my models had about a 33% accuracy for TSM overall. And at the end of this last split, I believe that went up to 47%.
Well, at least it was a little better for them, but
a little better, but with an overall average of, yeah.
They're definitely a different team, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
they kind of were like that outlier team in most respects, which is super interesting because, I mean, you say that, right? Like, 33% accuracy. I've seen what your model can do, and most of the time it's like what, like 60, 70% sometimes with some teams.
At worst, well, let's put it this way. I have a 62% overall for all the teams, and it was at the end of spring. It was at about 65, so I went down. But say with a 60% accuracy over all teams, if TSM is at 33%, imagine how much higher it would actually be if I got all those games right, or at least most of those games right.
Oh, for sure.
It would be in the 70, 75%. And that's what hits me so hard, is that if I had just went in and just manually changed every loss to a win, or saying it thinks they're going to lose, I'm going to say they're going to win, it would have been so much higher.
Yeah.
It really goes against what I'm trying to build here. So it's you win some, you lose some. I know what's been going on. It's at worst. The week after the midseason showdown, or week 7, I had a 20% prediction rate.
Good God. That's
And that was really bad. And that was Golden Guardians upsetting C9. That was, I think, Immortals upset 100 Thieves that Friday. That was for me, and it didn't get much better from there, and only partially because of TSM. There were things such as Golden Guardians getting licorice halfway through, or benching Niles halfway through the year to get solo on. A lot of those things factored into it, and it was just a strange year for stats overall, with the top teams not having the best laners necessarily. Immortals comes to mind for me. Raze and Destiny, if you look at their all-time record, are pretty good, but they're not. And they just occasionally they would get 1,500 goal difference at 10, just randomly.
Yeah.
Throw everything off. So a few challenges this year that have been coming up that I haven't had to experience before, but that's part of the fun for me. I enjoy working those things out, see if I can fix those or make them go away.
Well, and I think for TSM, which we'll go into here in a second, that's not surprising. I think they were a statistical anomaly when it comes to teams. And before we dive in that, I want to know which team was most predictable. Which one was the one
the team that was most predictable in spring was TL.
Okay, that makes sense.
In summer was 100 Thieves.
Interesting. So even the addition of Abadage made it still.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Even with just with summer, it was almost like FBI would always get lane advantages. Abadage would usually have pretty good stats. Even if he was playing roamers or supportive champions like Karma, he would always look pretty good just from the eye test. Someday was never really that far behind, I would say. Maybe out of the 5 of them, he would maybe pull the worst because he's more of a weak side player and they would play more through closer and FBI. But they were always in the top of at least my standing. So if my model says they're going to win, they finish second overall, well, they're just easy to predict, I suppose.
Absolutely. Okay. Interesting. And I mean, that doesn't totally surprise me. I mean, I feel like you generally knew there weren't their losses were generally upsets, not just because they were good, but in terms of the standings, but you just knew them as players. It was like they walked into a game, you're like, after week 1, you're like, all right, they're probably going to win this game. So
yeah,
that's interesting. All right, so then let's look at TSM, because one of the things that I've honestly noticed probably the most about TSM when working, on this show specifically, and a couple other things, trying to do writing, which I will definitely do more next year, TSM writing. But one of the things that I always came back to was we were one of the lowest kill teams in the entire league. And I think that had to do with our desire to play for late game and just out macro people. I always go back to that very first regular season game in FlyQuest where we had, all 6 outer towers down by 15 minutes, but still lost because we just didn't know what to do with ourselves, after that. And so, I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of, how does a team like TSM that they're not the exciting high kill team, right? They're the team that really relies on their overall teamwork, which I think would describe this team overall, right? when we're looking back on this 2021 season, what did your is this probably what messed with your model, and do you think there's a way maybe to work with that, and also just what did you think about the fact that this was kind of what the team was?
Yeah, it's starting with the model. There is absolutely no way that I could possibly quantify this in a way that's just friendship or teamwork, or these players work well together. They're less likely to throw games when they're ahead. They're more likely to bring it back when they're behind. That's so difficult, especially because as soon as I build something or I say, okay, this team has been together a lot, they play this certain way. A patch changes, someone gets benched, someone gets brought in. Then it's wrong immediately. And this only really works for teams that stay together for the entire year, like they did. So it's a difficult thing to measure. Certainly, how I personally feel about this is I was not as big of a fan as this strategy.
Okay.
Mostly because I've been a fan for a long time, and when I see the team play this way with low laning stats but just better macro than the rest of the league, and they just basically just skill check the rest of the team without making any mistakes. It reminds me of 2015 summer, where they did exactly that, and Santorin would be. I'm not comparing Santorin to Spica at that point, but Dyrus was a lot like Huni in some games, except if we were playing through Huni, which never really happened with Dyrus. But it always felt like that Bjergsen would play well, and maybe you can translate that to Spica would play well and generate his advantages, and the rest of the team would be there, present. And that worked. They won. They didn't win that split. They went to Worlds, and they went 1-5, I believe.
God, yeah.
Not ideal, and that's kind of brought the flashbacks to me, saying, "Oh, if the global meta has moved far, far beyond this." And when I'm watching LPL and when I'm watching the LEC with some teams, Madeline specifically, Fnatic towards the end, Misfits. If this team did go to Worlds, I have absolutely zero faith that anything would happen or anything exciting would really happen, because you can't do that to world-class teams. They're not going to let you scale back into the game. They're not going to let you just keep a steady gold advantage without snowballing it. So I wasn't particularly happy about that. Whether that's on the players or the coaching staff is yet to be seen.
Yeah.
I think.
No, and that's the problem, is it's like what do we see, to a certain degree, I feel like it was coaching, because this is how I think Bjergsen likes to play the game, right? I mean, we've seen it in every TSM iteration that he has been on. There's rarely extreme team fighting or laning at a intense level, because, I mean, people forget, Bjergsen's laning stats were pretty good, but it's not like we were watching him just Jizuke at his, peak performance somebody, right? Like, it just didn't happen. And the team has always kind of been built that way. I think the problem is that normally you would have somebody alongside him that would be super aggressive, right? So whether that was Dardoch at one point, which worked sometimes, but not often enough. There was Broken Blade, who I think that was probably one of the best iterations of what it could have been. And then you also had Double Lift, right? Where I think, like, his vision for this team was looking at Power of Evil as him to a certain degree, where it's you just stick around in lane and then you go help everybody else, right? And then you out team fight them after you're done helping them. And the problem was, I don't know, it felt like at different points, Huni actually, almost to his detriment, played too passively. And then, Lost wasn't used to being played through, because we never did it the whole year. And then when, we were used to playing through top, and then we tried to play through bot, he wasn't ready to carry. And so to me, I think that's almost a fundamental error that this team wanted to have. It almost felt like they just tried to play safe until they could get to Worlds, and then they would do it. Because I think you'd agree too. Their goal was to get to Worlds. They didn't a championship would have been nice, but
but an 8th championship at this point is less important.
Yeah, especially when you can redeem yourself from 0-6.
Yeah,
and so that's where I want to kind of talk a little bit about the team. Now, I know you didn't have a chance really to watch TSM Legends yet. I finally brought myself to it this morning because I knew I wanted to talk about it a little bit for the show. I'll give you a little bit of spoiler here, Ben, but not too much. We all know how the season ended. And you've seen everybody talking about it. So,
yeah.
The crazy thing is like, when Lost is still beating himself up for the Game 2 thing, where he's putting all the pressure, I should have stolen the Elder Drake. Bro, like, that would have been unbelievable. I mean, to be completely honest, it's not like that was like an easy play for him to make. And I would actually argue, and I love your thoughts on this really quickly too, I actually thought that 5-game series was the best Lost had looked all year.
Absolutely.
I mean, he looked like what you had hoped when we originally talked about it, and what I had hoped as well, as a staunch defender of his.
Imagine that if that had been him all year.
Dude,
I mean, already finished first in the regular season, obviously, but if that loss had been present the entire year, it would have opened up a lot of ways the team could play, practice more things, and I don't know. It's interesting to think about because obviously they couldn't have placed any better, but would him having played that well the entire year made them win against C9 or TL? I personally don't think so, because he did play so well in that series and they lost.
Yeah, I think the C9 series was more just a mental issue. I think to be honest, they should have won 4 of those 5 games.
Yes, they absolutely should have won.
1, 2, 3.
They probably could have. They won game 1. Game 2, they just threw it so hard, right?
Yep.
Game 3, they won really hard. Game 4 was less of a throw than game 2, but it was still kind of like
They could have walked.
They could have easily won that game. Game 5 was not like that at all.
No. And so that's where, and that's where I think it's interesting because, in Legends, like, Lost is clearly the most upset. Then you see Spica like crying, which was tough. I mean, it was real tears. I mean, and like Lost was one of the things he says in it, which is gonna kill me when he inevitably gets replaced, was he was like, it wasn't about, for him, it wasn't about winning to get to Worlds necessarily for him. He says, like, it was about winning so that his teammates would be happy and he could continue to create memories and a story with that team, which to me kind of signifies that he knows he's probably on his way out. And so, like, that's...
You think Speak is on his way out?
No, that was what Lost said. That was what Lost said. Is he like, I wanted to create... No, I don't think... No, Spica pretty much confirmed in that video that he's staying.
Okay, yeah.
He made it very, very apparent, next year I'm going to win with this, with this team. Now, obviously he means TSM. I don't think he has much control over what they're going to do next. But
well,
when I say that,
there's always been a...
I say that more as in they will consult him, but I still think that they have a plan in mind. And it's going to be interesting.
I hope so. I really hope there's a plan and it's not just run it back, because whether it's doing the same draft again, trying the same strategy again, running the same roster again, I am never a fan of just sitting and saying, we messed up. We could do this better if we had a second shot at it. I am not so happy with that ideology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think I'm more of a proponent of change. Change is good for a lot of things, and say, for instance, this roster runs it back next year, they may fall into old habits. They may have certain expectations set on them. And I think it's just better in general to say, this is a new roster or this is a new player. No one really knows what's going to happen. And then it's the sky's the limit at that point.
Absolutely. And so that's, so the piggybacking off of that, the way TSM Legends ended, which again, it's been 2 weeks plus since the game. Clearly they needed some time. It's very interesting for a couple of reasons. And before we dive deep into roster stuff, because we're not going to go super duper deep, I do want you all to know that most likely in 2 weeks, potentially next week, but sometime in the next 2 episodes, myself, Ben, Tim, and maybe one other, will be doing a roundtable discussion about the team. My goal is I'm going to have a before, free agent season goes crazy talk where we really take a deep dive into our thoughts on the current roster, the changes that they could make, and then we'll do a roundtable discussion about the changes that do happen, probably later in November. So, keep your eyes out for that. I think those are going to be some really fun episodes for us to talk about. It's going to be tough, but we'll have to try to fit it all into an hour. Maybe we'll break it up into 2 episodes that week. We'll have to see how the discussion goes. But, to kind of make it was really interesting for me, to be completely honest with you, Ben, is because at the end of TSM Legends, now again, by the way, guys, I just skipped to the C9 part because clearly I'm a masochist and I just love to hurt myself. Whereas I know most people didn't get past the Immortals part. I didn't care about that. I wanted to see how the team felt afterwards, to be honest. So I haven't watched that early part yet. But the only people who were interviewed at all were Lost and Spica. There was no Sword Art. There was no Power of Evil. There was no Huni. And the thing is like, in TSM Legends this year, it seemingly has been focused on one player, right, for each episode, which I've personally enjoyed. They've done a good job, I think, of highlighting each player individually. There's a part of me, Ben, that wonders if those 2 are the only 2 that are staying, which people
I think it's
are
a little too
not
early
going to be
say
happy
that.
about that. Well, listen, here is my hypothesis. They had 3 weeks, essentially, to make this TSM Legends. They had all of the footage, the initial footage, right away, which we know they can normally churn that out in about 5 days. I have 2 theories. Either Power of Evil, Huni, and Sword Art either declined, / they didn't pick their parts, or is it possible that they're not so sure that they're going to be staying? And that's, it's a little tinfoil hatty. I understand that. But we'll have to see, too. Because it's interesting, because like Power of Evil tweeted out just last week that they were having a team dinner together. And there have been rumors that Bjergsen wants to run it back with the same roster again. I want to know your thoughts kind of with all of this swirling. Obviously, it is too early for us to make true predictions. But in your mind, is there anything that we can kind of gather from that? Because I'm trying to hold off. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, to be completely honest. Like, as much as I would love to believe that we can pick something from that, the reason I bring it up is because I'm talking to you all directly. Guys, like, we just don't know. And that's what I tried to reference back when we were trying to talk about roster decisions literally 5 minutes after the season ended. I want everybody to just kind of watch and see how Worlds goes and see what happens, right? Like, the only player that we know, big name players that we know that have re-signed anything, and those aren't even confirmed, by the way, are apparently Caps and Kaiser over in the LEC.
And Carzy has re-signed, I believe.
Not that I'm aware of.
I think maybe that was just a rumor.
The rumor
that
is that he is in the middle of contract discussions, but has not officially signed anything. That's what I have seen, though. I could have missed something.
Self-made re-signed with Vitality.
Oh, that's allegedly. The other one. Yeah, that's the other one too, allegedly. So, listen, and I'm the reason I say this, guys, is because like I've been looking at the players that like are available, right, for 2021. Let me bring this up real quick. Where is this at? Right here. How did I miss this? Sorry, y'all. Give me just a second to find this. I thought I had this up already. Man, this is why I suck, guys. No, I'm just kidding. I got this. Open. So what I've been trying to do is look at, who's available, who's not, because we all know now, especially, that there are, the NA spots, the deciding factor that we have to have 3 players, from NA on our team is not changing this year. And the one good thing is we know Spica's staying, and that takes care of one. But there are not a lot of major contracts up this coming year outside of from some of the bad teams. And so, when I think that we start some of these discussions, Ben, I think that's the first thing we've got to talk about, right? And and with that, right there, that makes me feel truly, and people aren't gonna like this, like there's a better chance that Lost stays than I think people think.
Yeah,
almost
I agree.
Certainly because of the fact that he counts as a resident.
Yeah, it's strange. There aren't a lot of free agents, especially in bot lane. Contract buyouts always happen, and they're always something to consider. It's not out of the question. I think that there isn't an obvious replacement coming up because I don't think Cody Sun is necessarily that big of an improvement. I don't think Gorka would be that big of an improvement.
Definitely not Gorka. Sorry.
And so there's no pipeline there. And for academy bot laners that they could easily get out, amateur bot laners, there are a few I have in mind. Maybe I won't spoil those just yet, but it's unlikely. TSM's not quite the team to grab the rookie. They're always the team that grabs the rookie after their first year. Mm-hmm. So everyone's saying Danny. I think Evil Geniuses will hold on to Danny with their life.
Yeah, I think
if I were them, I would.
I got into a huge argument with somebody on Reddit where they were like, "We're just TSM, so we're just going to be able to get Danny if we want to." I was like, "Bro, that is not how it works."
Not anymore. It's maybe in 2016, yes.
Yeah, they are.
But Evil Geniuses doesn't have to do that if they don't want to. Maybe TSM says, "Hey, Evil Geniuses, remember when you wanted Lost? We could do that trade still." But I would be surprised unless TSM genuinely can't find anything else and doesn't want to keep Lost by any means, and they desperately agree to something that is far beyond what Danny is worth. I don't think it's happening.
No, I would put that at like less than 5% chance of happening.
Right. I would put honestly I think it's more likely that they just pull a Biofrost and just say we're gonna take a chance on this guy than Danny's contract gets bought out.
Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering, I have watched Doublelift streams lately. He has confirmed not coming back. So that ain't happening. And I think Sneaky, not that I think TSM fans would want him necessarily, also definitely not coming back. So, we can put those, to bed. I think for them to bring back Doublelift, I think the only way that would happen is if they brought back Bjergsen. And
which is less likely to me.
Happen. Yeah, I mean, it's less likely that Bjergsen comes back to play than even double lift, I think. So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
he likes coaching. He did a good job.
I think so too. A lot of the episodes of TSM Legends that I would watch, listening to him be hard on the players and discuss practice, it seems like he is fit into the role very well. And that is what I would want out of a coach, to really get on their backs and say, we need to practice this. Why aren't you doing it? It seems like they have a good relationship and he's doing a good job. Maybe we don't know the whole story. Maybe you never know. This could be a Golden Guardians from last year. Same players moved to a different org. One. If that happens again, if all 5 of these players get bought out by Immortals and then they win Spring Split, I will not be as happy with Bjergsen anymore. But very unlikely, I think.
No, I completely agree. So we'll put those craziness to rest. I think Reckless is a possibility, but then you'd have to look at non-import mid or potentially support. And that's where I think this discussion, again, we're going to dive really deep into possible people for every position, top possible iterations of this team. I like the idea that Tim Sevenhuisen did in terms of the armchair GM. I think that those are always fun to do. I think you can do them a lot. I kind of did it a little bit last year with TSM specifically, a little bit later on once we kind of had a better idea of who wasn't, getting going somewhere. But, I want to ask you, Ben, because I have my personal opinions on this. If there's one player to stay besides Spica, which one do you think that's going to be? And why?
Which one do I think it's going to be, or which one?
Which one of the 4?
Sword Art.
Okay.
Easily. I think Sword Art still wants to play. I think the contract is so big that I feel like it's a given. I don't think badly at all. And Sword Art could easily just say, I want that bot laner next. That happens a lot. That high profile supports choose who they play with. And I think that's a very likely scenario, is that Spica stays, Sword Art stays, Sword Art picks a native NA ADC, whoever that may be. Or he picks an import. I don't recall if it was Double Lift that found Yurson.
No, it was Sword Art. From what I
Sword Art found Yurson.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both supports, so bad example. But Sword Art's, you need to get this guy, and then TSM imported him. Now he's in Academy. I think that could happen again pretty easily with a bot laner.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an LDL bot laner that was just released from their contract. Maybe it's a Taiwanese bot laner. Who knows? I don't know, but I think Sword Art stays. That's the most likely for me. If I would want Sword Art to stay, I think so. I think I'd be completely content with that.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing, is it's kind of tough when looking again at the landscape of what needs to happen and who's actually available.
Mm-hmm.
As much as people don't like to to hear that, and that's where I'm intrigued to see what happens next. Because for me, and again, this is not going to be a popular opinion, I think Huni might stay. I think I might rank Huni as my highest one to stay for a few reasons. My number one is I think he had his best season of LCS play. I know his Immortals run was good. I know he did fine on Echo Fox, but I feel like this season of TSM, he really grew. and I think that he showed that he could be a reliable weak side player for the first time, really, ever. I mean, like, think about the summer. How many int performances did we really get from Hooney? Very few that I can recall where it was just true, full-on, run it down, right? Especially in lane. And even Alfari straight up said it in an interview. Hooney was the best laner besides himself. And that man thinks a lot of himself. So I take that as like, okay. And I think Hooney has a respect for Bjergsen that allows for him to work well with him. It seemed very apparent that he liked, his coach. And not just that, and I think more importantly, if you're going to, because like, I'm going to be honest, guys. They should have just reset the entire team this past year. Because we're now in the position where what they did this year, big contracts, all that, stuff that people like to, bitch and moan about with the LCS, it didn't work. It didn't, right? And now it's like, all right, are they going to literally just get rid of everybody and just keep Spica in his last year of his contract? And I can't see that happening. And the person that he seemingly vibed with most, you watched a lot of the TSM Legends, you watched the way they interact in game and on Twitter, all that stuff. I think Hooney is the person who he enjoyed playing with the most and had the most synergy with. So, yeah, maybe they are going to have to redo, 3 positions. I think most likely it's only going to be 2, sadly. But, I think Hooney makes the most sense to me. I also don't think that there are as realistic of top lane options, especially in NA, compared to almost every other position.
And it's not really worth importing top lane. Unless you're importing Alfari, I would not use an import slot on top lane if you can help it.
Me neither.
Which makes Hooney all the more valuable.
Exactly.
I think he was. If you're just counting domestic top lanes, I think he performed the best. Maybe that's just the way the teams played. I don't think a lot of teams played through top lane. Jenkins had a good showing. Maybe not the best, but he's inexperienced. I don't think that's as likely, but Hooney staying wouldn't bother me at all. I would love to see the team get more depth of play, though, and try different strategies rather than just do the Hooney sword art combo every game.
Well, and that's where I think it's going to be important that we specifically talk about the rest of the team. Because we already know what we have there, and I think as a coach, that should make them happy, right? Because you can find any support that can go run up there and help, Hooney. I mean, that's not like some secret sauce, right? Like, that's...
Yeah.
The blueprint's there. And you know that you can win with it domestically most of the time, right? Unless if you run into Alfari. And I think that it's harder to find an impact player in the top lane as well. And so that to me is why I think Hooney makes the most sense to be staying. For numerous reasons. Like if I had to put money on it, I think the odds would extremely favor Hooney most of all. Now the funny thing is, not funny. The interesting thing I should say is there is not a single TSM member whose contract is up, actually, except for the coaching staff of Bjergsen, Curry, and Peter Zhang. Everybody else is under contract. Lost is under contract till 2023. He's the only one of the 5-member squad that has a contract beyond 2022 currently. So, that's gotta make you think, right? Like and this is going to be the question that we're going to look at much more in depth here in a couple weeks, but it's going to be one that I want to, propose to you guys. Like, it's not like we have any contracts coming up. I'm going to ask you, the viewers, and I'm going to ask you, Ben, the inevitable question. what is the percentage or what is the likelihood in your mind that TSM just run it back? Because everybody is under contract for next year. Or at least
Are we
4.
betting?
I'm gonna say at least 4 members. At least 4 members.
4 members. I would not put a lot of money on that, honestly. Okay. I think most likely I think the highest number of people that say is 3 for the reasons that we've talked about before.
Okay. And are you thinking Huni, Spica, Sword Art, would those be your 3?
I think that's the most likely. I think out of all the combinations of 3 that we could possibly have, I'd be the most okay with if it was any combination, including Power of Evil or a Lost, but letting go of Sword Art or Huni, I'd just say, I'm not so sure. I guess it would depend on who we got, but in general, yeah, I think I'd be the most okay with that if we're going to keep a group of players. More than that, I think Lost Power of Evil had their own weaknesses. Maybe a little too one-dimensional with players.
Interesting. Okay. So, yeah, and then I ask you all, what do you guys think? I actually think it's a little bit higher than you. I would say it's a 1 in 5 chance. I think 20%. At least 4. I think
20% is not a lot.
Oh, I figured it was a lot more than I said. A lot more than what you said. I figured you were thinking like 5%, but
I think I would say 10.
Okay, so maybe not much more. But see, and then I have 10% that they keep 4, all 5. I have 20% that they keep 4, 10% that they keep all 5.
I'm saying 0% they keep all 5, 5% they keep 4, 10% they keep 3.
Wow, you're really low. I think it's I would almost say the combination of Huni, Spica, and Sword Art is like 50% or higher.
But yeah, I think maybe that's a little too low. I think I'll give it a third chance.
Okay.
1 in 3 to say Huni, Spica, Sword Art. The other 2 are, I would say, not combinations with including Lost Power of Evil. I think the other 2 options are they get 3 new players.
Yeah, and that's gonna be what's really interesting to see because, I remember putting out a poll like during the middle of the year, or at least bringing it up somewhere, where it's like, hey, you guys think Power of Evil's staying? Like he's the 1-year player, and has it been because of what we just saw? Where he is a little bit one-dimensional. Now I will still argue I think he was starting to show me that he was kind of getting out of his depth in a good way, like he's being pushed out of the box by Bjergsen to be a different type of player. But because I think, I don't know if it was you or somebody was arguing with me that like Power of Evil specifically, does not have any more upside. Like we know exactly what he is, and that's never going to change.
That may have well been me.
It might have been you. I can't remember, but I will say I fully disagree with that. I think he is somebody who showed us this year that he's willing to pull out other things, and willing to learn them. I was impressed with his rise. I don't think his rise was the reason why we lost any games, and I think he made some pretty good plays on it overall. I think his Viego performances were really good too, honestly, which was very rare for him. I think that was the most surprising pick I saw out of him all year. I would have loved to have, seen his TF. I think is in my opinion that is his biggest weakness, is TF not being able to play TF or Galio. Obligatory Galio response here. Part of the podcast, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It's this might be the most hard to predict team, and what I mean by that is like, we know teams like Dignitas, teams like FlyQuest, like we know there are going to be massive changes on those teams. Who we may not necessarily know, but we know there are going to be massive changes on those teams. With TSM, it's like you won first place and you were arguably better than C9. You just threw game 2, right? Like they could have 3-0'd C9. I think that people are really forgetting that this team was one bad throw away from 3-0ing C9.
Mhm.
And so I don't want them necessarily to run it back as much as it breaks my heart, because I do love this entire team. I think they're very fun. I think they're interesting. I think that they play a very different style of League of Legends than a lot of other people, and I think that that's been a bad thing in some people's minds. I actually kind of liked it. I think it was a little bit different in terms of where the meta was, and I can tell you this much: if it was a slower meta, I don't think that there's any chance we would have ever lost. I just think that the metas just did not favor this team, and we talked about it at the beginning of summer. They still figured out first place, so clearly there is talent within this team. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we're going to take a much deeper dive in this in a couple weeks. But I at least want to talk about it because, I mean, you'll agree. That's the conversation that has started literally since the second that those games ended. Who's staying? Who's going? What is this team's identity? What are they going to do next? And, the first thing I'm going to predict, they're going to re-sign Bjergsen and Curry to long-term deals. I'm going to say Bjergsen to a 3-year deal and Curry to at least 2. I know Curry might be interested in a head coaching job, but I think he loves coaching with Bjerg. Seems pretty obvious at this point, and I think that they mesh pretty well together. So that's my first prediction of the offseason. My second one, I think they're going to try to extend Spica. I really do, because I don't think they want to lose him after the 2022 season. Any thoughts on that one there, Ben?
I completely agree. I don't think Bjergsen could go anywhere if he wanted to, just because he owns stock in the company. But he's a part owner. I don't think Riot would allow him to go somewhere else. But if that's the difference between him continuing coaching and then completely retiring, I think so. I completely agree with those two. But after that, I think I would put money down that in either mid or ADC, there will be a crazy signing,
Really?
and not a reckless. I mean,
what about a Chovy?
No, no Chovy, no Knight, no Showmaker. I think it's going to be someone that people will say, this player's awful, or this player's trash, or why would they do this? TSM is out of money, or they don't care about winning anymore. That will happen. I think.
God.
I have names in mind. I don't want to spoil.
Give me one. Give me one name.
One name. Do you want NA or EU? Because I've been watching EU Masters. I've been watching Proving Grounds.
I mean, there are some EU Master players that if they signed, I would not be upset. But
yeah.
But
who knows? Maybe
I want your most outrageous player that you think is realistic that they could sign at either of those two positions.
My most outrageous player that I think
one that
is
would make people the
possible?
most upset.
Most upset?
Yeah.
I would say,
and I'm not talking about like you pick like, I don't know, who would be a bad example here?
Arrow would be a bad example.
Arrow. Like, for some god-awful reason. Tim, if you listen to this podcast, I'm sure you don't, but if you do, Bud, I know you're high on Arrow. That dude's almost 30 years old. None of these teams are going to want Arrow. I can almost guarantee it. And if they do, he finishes in the bottom 3. Almost guaranteed. So, sorry. I don't care how much better he's gotten. It's just, these teams like young players. That's just how it works. So, whatever. But yeah, who's the other one? Who's one?
I would hate to ruin my next pick in Dynasty, but I think there's not a very good chance, but an idea that I had was Bradley from Wildcard Red.
Really?
Yes.
It's not very interesting.
I wouldn't put it as likely or even a maybe, but I could see it happening. He's the best amateur mid laner right now, bar none. Well, I say amateur.
APA.
Him or Jojo Pyun. APA has also had very good performances. I think that's a good one.
I think he's a star. I think he just needs.
APA could happen too. EG, I think, probably won't let go JoJo either because Jizuke's contract is coming up, and I think they want JoJo Pyun to play for them.
Probably.
So I think you pull from a team that does not have a pro league partner like APA or like Bradley, or maybe you go deeper. Maybe you go to EU Masters. Won't say all the names yet. We'll have a huge discussion about this later.
Oh man, that is quite the tease. I will say I as much as I love this team, I would love if they were to announce here's my dream scenario. I'm not going to say who. My dream scenario is they announce Spica to a 3 to 5 year deal, right? And get him in there because then he gets guaranteed money and they can still sell him elsewhere if they need to, right? If he still really actually wants to go to China, he can still go there if he wants to, but at least he has guaranteed money, while he's here. My dream scenario would be they sign him to a really long-term deal and they go 4 youngins.
I'd love that.
Best young team that they can, and they build the entire team around him. They go out, they sign, maybe.
Are you going to put this roster together to bring it up at round table?
I won't say anything. Yeah, I won't say anything, but yes, I will be. I love young rosters, and I think that TSM's a team that could survive doing it, although I know the fans would be pissed off. I think, guys, I'll tell you right now, and like I said, I will deep dive this in a couple weeks. The way for an NA team to find success long term is to find 3 of the best young NA players that you can find, and then you can build your imports around that instead of having the strategy of grab the imports that you can and then try to fill it in with some NA talent that might be available. And the best way to do that is you get them young, you teach them the systems that you want to teach them, and then you can, and then you win. I mean, it's just
find the next Spica, find the next Blabber. I mean,
they're there. I think
it's totally possible.
People I think are really sleeping on it, and everybody's already ready to blow it all up. But if they do this system right, guys, I'm telling you, not even just TSM, NA is going to perform at Worlds. It took EU only 2, maybe 3 years once they really committed to building out the under layers, and now we're seeing them reap the benefits of that. I mean, teams like Mad Lions came because they invested, right? Mad Lions started off as one great player named Humanoid who was young and 4 very young players from around the world, technically. I know it was around mostly Europe, but still.
And Mad Lions was an EU Masters team.
Yeah. Completely.
I mean, they were spliced before, but bought out by Mad Lions, and Carzy from EU Masters, Larson is from EU Masters Inspired, Adam,
Kaiser.
Adam. It's
Humanoid,
crazy.
technically.
You never really know. And if EU just decided we're gonna stick with the same players, we're gonna keep in 2016 if Froggen stayed in Europe instead of leaving to go to play for Echofox. I don't think, if you never sign Humanoid, you never sign Larson.
Yep.
You never sign Carzy. Yeah, it's kind of an awful thing to think about, but a lot of people take that for granted and say, "Well, we have these players."
It's like, well, you might not have.
You almost didn't.
If teams weren't willing to have maybe a subpar year, and I believe that, and I'll tell you this right now, I guarantee you that if they took a young team and built it around Spica, that by the end of summer next year, that team would be vying for a world spot. I guarantee it.
Hear me out. This is part of a pipe dream, and it'll be a little bit of a tease for the round table. But imagine this: 100 Thieves gets out of groups. They re-sign Closer Kenvy's ready to go, but 100 Thieves don't want to give up closer. TSM passes up Kenvy, but I think that just him being in the league will help a lot because he is really the type of player that encourages junglers to play better.
I'm telling you right now, he's going to TL.
TL, really?
I don't think they're going to re-sign Santorin.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Can you imagine a team of Alfari, Kenvy, Jensen, Tactical, and Core JJ? That's a good team. That's a really good team.
That is a good team.
That's a scary good team.
Oh, Lord. Honestly.
Can you imagine Golden Guardians, Licorice, Kenvy, a Blaze Olive, a much better AD carry, and Chime? That's the team I'm watching for right now.
That team would be fifth. Even with Kenvy, I think there's management issues there. There absolutely
there's not. Dude, Anero's a great coach. He is a great
for a mid team.
I'm telling you right now, they go out and if that team goes out right now. Sorry guys, we're gonna take 3 minutes here because then we got to wrap this up. I'm gonna give you my spiel right here. Licorice, Kenvy, a Blaze Olive, and the best import AD carry that you can find, plus Chime. That team is pushing Worlds at the end of 2022.
I disagree. But if that actually happens, we could on record bet on it.
Yeah, you guys could say. I mean, you heard it here first. I'm just telling you. I think Licorice and it's not that Iconic was bad, by the way. Actually, Iconic is probably the biggest surprise player for me this year.
I called that.
Honest.
Not
you
on
did.
the podcast.
No, you did though.
Not
you
on the
told
podcast, but in the Talking TSM Discord.
You did.
I said Iconic is that player.
Now, originally we did it as a joke. You have to admit that.
Joking.
Yeah, you were. Baloney.
No. From not from Proving Grounds, but from Scouting Grounds. He impressed me so much.
He did the opposite for me. I thought he was pretty rough, but
in spring, not so good.
No, I'm talking about during. I had him as one of my worst rated players from.
You
Scouting
gotta
Grounds.
And
I just want you to know.
Team.
Go back and look at my Scouting Grounds grades. I was actually pretty spot on with most of them. I killed it. Like you can go back and even look. Like I have the only one that I struck out big time on was Niles. I think everybody did. That's
yeah, I did too.
That one's one of the. I still think he can be really good. I think.
Have you been watching him in Proving Grounds?
No, I haven't. I haven't had a chance to watch much Proving Grounds.
He's been doing all right. He has had some pretty good games, especially in the post academy tournaments.
I don't doubt it. His biggest problem is I think he just was wanting to do too much and trying to lead the entire team by himself.
Yeah, it's possible. And
I think he tried to shot call from the top lane.
Maybe the team just couldn't really play around him, or he couldn't play with the team and what they wanted to do. Another reason why I think Golden Guardians, even with Kenvy and the best ADC in the world, would win.
Oh man. Okay, imagine this is my last Imagine team. Impact, Kenvy, Jizuke, Danny, and Ignar.
No.
That would be an interesting team. Just saying.
Impact goes to military service after next year.
That's right. This is the last year we're gonna get Impact, dude.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
I'm not a huge fan of Jizuke. I'll put that on record.
I love him. I think he's the most interesting mid laner.
Interesting, sure. But do you want an interesting player? Or do you want a good player?
The man can. Hey, listen. If Bjergsen was able to corral Huni, imagine what he could do with Jizuke. I'm gonna throw that into the ether because
I'll take that. Yeah.
There's the Huni from February to the Huni in September. Well, I guess technically August. Those are two very different players. Very different players. And we saw that progression. But I digress because we have to go. Unfortunately, Ben, I always really enjoy talking to you, man. It is seriously, I think, the most fun discussions that I have on this show. No offense to everybody else, I love all of you guys too, but he and I just, I think, have we have like a mental link in the way that we think, even when we disagree. I think we normally we know why the person is disagreeing. We just we don't agree. It's an agree to disagree. So any shout outs you want to give real quick before we head out?
I want to shout out the Talking TSM Discord.
Oh yeah,
because that is not as active as I want it to be.
Yeah, call them out.
No, not the people. There's just not enough people in it.
I know. I really want. Guys, he's right. If you listen to the show, which I know there are a few hundred of you who do every week, which I love all of you and I appreciate. I cannot express that. I really created this show without the intention of growing a huge fan base or anything. I mostly did it, with the hope that I could vent a little bit, which has partially become that. But in all seriousness, we have a lot of fun over there in the Talking TSM Discord. And I think there's a lot of really opinionated people in a very good way. So if you're listening, hit us up. Find a way to come in and join. I think we've got a good cast of characters in there. Everybody's really respectful. Everybody's really nice. I don't think, Ben, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's anybody who's been problematic in the entire group. So yeah, definitely a shout out to them. In a good way and a bad way. Good because the people who are there are great. Bad because we need some more friends in there. So feel free to join in. But yeah, thanks again. And I'll be excited to talk to you here in probably 2 weeks. I think that round table is going to be awesome. I am ecstatic for that one.
I think there's going to be some hard truths and a lot of disagreement in there, especially with the people that we have on.
Yeah. Oh man. Especially if one, and you know who you are. If you decide to come in on this, which I hope you do, that's my Homer boy. I love him. And I don't mean homie. I mean he's a TSM Homer all the way, and I love it. Gives me that juice, that life force.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome. So make sure you guys come back in 2 weeks. Outro time, guys. I did not have him do the outro because it's too long. So you get to hear my voice do the outro. If you like this show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure you hit that bell icon. I'm not doing the podcast part of it. I'm not gonna say making this number one because it already is. What do we need to talk about? I think it is. I don't think there's anything else out there. You guys can let me know if there is. Share with your friends. Hit me up on Twitter at @2GHRobertHaynes. Head to thegamehouse.com. We're going to have all the LCS news. I can tell you guys as soon as it is happening, we will probably have somebody on it. Most likely we're not going to do rumors right now. Haven't really decided on that yet. It's going to just kind of depend on time. My schedule opens up pretty substantially starting next week, so I will make sure to let you all know about that. But, with that, thanks for tuning in. This show's coming out right now every Monday and is exclusively for your TSM earholes. Apologies on this one being a little later than normal. Most of them will generally come out earlier in the afternoon. So I'm Robert Haynes, and this has been Talking TSM. I'll see you all next week.